So, Kurt, I want to thank you very much for coming into your synagogue, Edgware and Hendon Reform Synagogue, to speak again about your experiences as a survivor. We've had the chance to hear you before at Yom HaShoah
Yes.
a couple of years ago, and before at the Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration for the entire borough of Barnet. It's really lovely to have this kind of intimate opportunity to speak with you, as I know you are going to be sculpted by Francis Segelman. Kurt, if you haven't met him before, he was born in 1925 in Cologne, in Germany. And Kurt, I'd love to maybe begin by asking you about your childhood in Cologne and what it was like growing up.
Well, I grew up, I suppose one would say normally, as children do here. In a close family, we had a large family in Cologne. I had uncles and aunts, cousins.
Could I ask you, Kurt, when did you know that something was going wrong in Germany? Something was going wrong in Cologne?
May have been 8 years old, 1933, when Jews had to leave ordinary local schools.
Okay.
You had to go to a Jewish school. That was what's happening. People are being segregated. And then at a certain moment, we went to the Jewish high school. I think it was the only grammar type school that was in West Germany.
Right.
And that was my luck, because our headmaster, Dr. Klebanski, he decided after Kristallnacht that one couldn't live in Germany anymore. He tried to transfer the whole school to England.
Wow. So Kristallnacht, do you have a memory of Kristallnacht?
Oh,
so this was, just for
absolutely.
anybody watching who's not clear about it,
no
that was
question.
the time at which the synagogues in Germany were
That's
attacked
right.
by Nazis
So
and other Jewish
this was
organizations.
the 9th of November. I went to school as usual on my bike. And on the corner of our street there was a Jewish shop. Not that I was aware it was Jewish, but it was a big toy shop that I knew of. And when I passed it, I saw there was the plate glass windows had been smashed in, but I assumed there must have been an accident of some sort. It was on the corner of the main road. And I carried on to school. When I got to school, it was a big commotion, fire engine standing there, teachers outside, smoke coming out of the school, and it says, "No school today. Go home, we'll let you know what's happening." The school wasn't burning, but there was a small synagogue next to the school, which had been set alight. And apparently all the equipment out of the school had been thrown out of windows, and there was a shocking mess there. And still, it somehow didn't register what had happened.
Right.
So I decided, well, before I go back home, my uncle was a butcher in Cologne. He had a very nice, beautiful shop. I said, I'll go and visit my uncle. But when I got to the shop, it was smashed to smithereens.
Wow.
Absolutely into small pieces. Suddenly I realized there's something not right. First the shop on the corner, then the school, then that. There's something something has happened. We didn't have mobile phones in those days. It was half an hour to get back home. We started school very early, so it was still early in the morning. As quickly as I could, I rode home. When I got home, my father wasn't at home. And apparently he hadn't been at home all night.
Right.
Friends of his, non-Jewish friends, had told him, "Don't be at home tonight. Something is going to happen. We can't tell you what, but it's better if you're not at home." Because during that night, many Jewish men were arrested, taken to the police, locked up, concentration camp, whatever. Didn't come back for a few days. And later when he came back, it was all over, in the sense that they weren't arresting anybody anymore.
Were you able to be bar mitzvah, or
Yes.
did Kristallnacht mean it couldn't happen?
I was bar mitzvah on the 10th of September,
Ah,
2 months before
2
Christmas.
months before.
Exactly 2 months.
In one of the synagogues in Cologne.
In the synagogue in Cologne, which was a Reform synagogue in my time,
Yes.
which is an Orthodox synagogue today.
Yeah.
It was completely destroyed and rebuilt and looks exactly as I remembered it.
Oh, really?
Yes, it is as it was as I remembered it. The inside is somewhat different, but the outside is as it was.
You said that you were very fortunate that the head teacher of your school felt we have got to get my students to England. So tell me about coming to England, and I believe you were on the Kindertransport in the formal way, how that was and how that felt.
Well, Klebanski, he's never been really remembered. Nobody has ever heard of him.
Okay.
He brought 130 of his
Wow.
children, his pupils, to England. Some came to. We were the first ones, purely because we had already a year of English. That was the reason why they selected us. One group went to Manchester, another group went to Liverpool, the final group went to Brighton. He came to England, got sponsors, managed to include us into the Kindertransport. I don't know how, but as it was going, and he had organized it.
Were you aware of how difficult this must have been for your parents?
No, not at all.
No.
They were going to America. They had already affidavits, and they were waiting. They had but the Americans, there was a quota. Americans had a quota for every country in Europe. They were on the German quota. They had a quota number. War broke out before their number was called.
Oh, my goodness.
So anyway, we were lucky. On the day that we had to get to the station to leave for England, so we were 20 boys and 20 girls,
All right.
same age, parallel classes at the school. For us at that moment, it was more like a school outing.
Right. Yes.
We were going to England. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Together, 20 boys, we all knew each other, we were friends together.
Did you stay together? Were you all did you all go to the same school together, or were you separated to different host families?
We came to London, we arrived in Liverpool Street, and people were there waiting for us. And he had managed, our headmaster, head director, had managed to get the Warm Lane Synagogue to be our sponsors.
All right. Now I want to take you a little bit further forwards again.
Yes.
When did you come to understand what had happened in Germany and the depth of the brutality and the murders and just how awful it had been?
It's very strange. When war broke out, it was just before my birthday. War broke out after my birthday. We were evacuated sort of the tail end of August.
Right.
Before war broke out. Most of the children from London were sent all over England. My parents had arranged to telephone me on my birthday,
Right.
which was on the 31st of August. Of course,
That's 1939.
1939.
Wow.
Of course, it never happened because we were not in London anymore.
Right.
And it was, I think, war broke out on the
2nd of September. Yes.
So by that time, there don't know if there's any communication possible. Anyway, I didn't get the call. I was evacuated. I wasn't in London anymore. Maybe they did phone, but were told. So I was in England. They were over there. But at that time, I used to get regular letters from them. They used to ride to Holland, where we had a cousin, and he would send on the letters to England, and that was how the letters went back and forth. Holland was overrun. Of course, then all communication stopped for a while. But there was an arrangement via, you may have probably have seen it, via the Red Cross. They
Yes.
used to send these Red Cross
Yes.
letters, but they were allowed to write 25 words, with including the address. I got to write Red Cross letters till 1942. So it was still, there was still communication. You know, I heard from my parents, always complained I didn't write enough and tell them enough. And in 1942, they were evacuated to Eastern Europe. That was they were sent from Cologne on the 20th of July 1942.
Right.
On the 19th of July, my father actually wrote this last letter, Red Cross letter that I've still got, that they were leaving. It was in July, sending me my best birthday wishes, telling me to be a good boy, etc., etc. And says, don't forget us. So they knew already.
Oh.
I probably received it in September.
Right.
And we know at that time, of course, we knew nothing. They were killed 3 days later. It could have been, if I had been in it, it would be what happened.
Yeah, but thank goodness your head teacher had realised had to get you out.
Absolutely.
Did your children know about how your childhood had been? Did your wife know, Inga? How did that begin?
Before we get there, they knew I had to learn something, and I was only 15 when I had to leave school. And I learned how to polish diamonds. Right. These were people who came from, refugees from Belgium who had started a small factory, and somebody suggested maybe they will give you a job. I went there, I thought it was a good idea, and gave me a broom, and I had to sweep out the factory. This was in Bedford still. Then when the Blitz was over, they moved back to London, and I came back with them to London, and I continued, and I became a diamond polisher and earned my living that way. 1945, end of the war, my wife had been in Auschwitz.
Right.
She came over, her sister was here. By an indirect route, she came to London in 1945. I met her somewhat later. When I came back from Bedford to London, I looked for a Jewish organization, and someone said, why don't you join Maccabi? So I went to Maccabi in Compton Gardens. They talked to me, interviewed me, and discovered that my background. And they said, well, we think you would be happier in Eaton Avenue at the Bar Kochba.
Oh, right.
Because they didn't want me and sent me somewhere else. I met my wife.
She was a member of the Bar Kochba
She
Club.
became a member of Bar Kochba when she came to London.
And of course, the two of you had shared something of the background that you have, although for her that she didn't get out until after the war.
That's right.
So it's both of you with this story.
We never talked about it.
Right.
We didn't speak German.
Okay.
Her German was very good. She used to teach German to English children, O-level, A-level.
Right.
But we never spoke German, and we never talked about it. She didn't want to talk about it. For her, that was then, now is now, we're going forward, we're not going backwards. It was her attitude. And there was nothing, we didn't talk about it. So my son, I think he resents it to this day, that he didn't know about it, that he didn't talk about it.
Although very common among people who had come here as refugees.
That's right.
But you did begin to speak. And indeed, I know you've even gone back to Cologne to speak to children there. So what happened to change from this is a thing we do not speak about to
That's interesting.
I've got to pass this story on?
I used to go to Edgware.
Yes, Association for Jewish Refugees.
That's right.
Yeah.
We went there. And in Pinner, regular meeting where we have speakers or have tea, we meet our friends. And when I first joined, we were all the same age. We were all of the same background. First generation survivors, if you like. And one day we had a lecture by a lady Bettine Lebeau came from Belgium. She was a child, a very small child, who survived, and her parents had survived. She came from Antwerp. And she used to give talks. She came to Edgware, and she talked about her philosophy. Her cup was always half full, never half empty. That was her approach to life. And she came to talk to us, and she also talked some Yiddish. And her Yiddish was the Yiddish that I had learned in the diamond trade.
Right.
So I spoke to her afterwards. I said, "Your Yiddish, I know your Yiddish. That's the way the people spoke who I used to work with." And she used to run the Yiddish group at the Survivor Center.
Okay.
So this is...
So this is the Holocaust Survivors Center in Hendon.
Yes, in Hendon at the time.
Yes.
So I joined.
Okay.
And I've been going there every Wednesday ever since to the Yiddish group. And then one day there was a phone call from Germany. This German radio reporter,
Oh,
I
right.
think. And she got in touch with the Survivor Center. She wanted to meet me.
Right.
In her research, I appeared somehow. So I replied to her. And we've become very good, close friends, would you believe? Which is something, I can't believe it to this day.
And did she bring you back to Cologne to speak?
Well, she called me one day, or sent me a message. Was I coming to Cologne? I said, why? It's the 75th anniversary of the deportation in 1942. I hadn't even realized it was. And she wanted to know whether I was coming for this commemoration. So I thought, well, I suppose it's a reason to go. They had a memorial get-together in Cologne on the day of their departure, on the 20th of July. And I went over there. They closed the road and there were a lot of people there, and all sorts of people spoke about it, and they asked me to speak as well, you know. But
did you speak in German there?
Yes.
Yeah? Is your German still fluent?
A 13-year-old's German fluency.
Yeah. Sure.
So I told them, yes, I'm one of the children.
Wow. So what happens next? How does this experience and what humanity can learn from this experience and what the Jewish community can learn and Germany can learn, how does this get passed on? Do you have feelings as to what should happen in future generations when you're not able to speak anymore?
Put it this way, I think it should be remembered. But I was asked many times,
of course.
What do you think? Have we learned? I don't think so. We haven't learned anything. We can see what's happening again and again and again. We always used to say, education, you have to tell the children, they should learn from it. Do the children learn? I don't know. That's the one time where I was in Cologne, and my friends' children said, would I come to their school to talk to the group? So I did. I always wonder if they listen because they have to be quiet, or whether they actually listen to what you say. And apparently, a year or so later, a teacher was trying to talk to them about the new refugees from Syria that were coming into Germany. And this little boy put up his hand and says, I know a refugee. So the teacher expected him to talk about one of the new arrivals. He meant me.
Oh. It made an impact.
So it obviously had listened, and it had remembered that I had talked to them about that story which happened years ago. So he had remembered.
So I'm hoping, as we come to an end now, that two things. First of all, what you have shared with us today, this is something that we can keep as a record. We can put on our synagogue website, make sure that it's available to people. And secondly, the sculpture that's being made of you says there is somebody whose story has got to be told. And I know that Francis has made many more, and is creating that sense that there are people whose stories we have to hear. So, Kurt, at this point, can I say thank you so much for all that you've shared. I really appreciate it. And you are a wonderful storyteller, and tells me, you make these awful experiences come to life so that we hear about it with your customary good humour as well, and recognising that there's a story to tell and we need to remember.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.